Okay, we're going to be doing factoring today, so we're just going to factor, which means take out basically common terms. So the first step in factoring is to factor out the greatest common factor. So what's the biggest factor that they both have in common? So for instance, in this example, x squared plus x, they both have an x, so you can take an x out. If x goes into x, it'd be x squared, just an x is left over. X into x is just plus 1. So notice if you were to multiply this back out, it'd be x squared plus x, which is our original problem. So that's the relationship there, but that's what it would look like in factoring a squared plus 3a plus 2. Right, we just do the double parentheses. If you were to FOIL that back out, it would equal that. Let's look at some examples. So the first one here, we're going to take out common terms. So that's the biggest factor that they both have in common. Well, 32, its factors are 1 goes into it, 2 goes into it, 4 goes into it, 8 goes into it, 16, and 32. And for 20, it'd be 1 goes into it, 2 goes into it, 4 goes into it, 5 goes into it, and 10 goes into it. Also 20. So what's the greatest one they both have in common? They both have a 1, they both have a 2, they both have a 4. They don't have an 8, they don't have a 5, they don't have 10 in common, or 16, or 32, or 20. So the greatest one they have in common is a 4. So we're going to use a 4. And then what else? A to the 5th and a to the 2nd. So a to the 2nd is the highest one they both have in common. And b to the 3rd. They both have a b to the 3rd. So 4 goes into 32 8 times. A squared goes into a 5th once. And there's 3 a's left over. So it'd be a cubed. And then b goes in that once. So we don't have to write anything. Minus 4 goes into 25 times. A squared goes into that once, and b cubed goes into that once. So therefore, that would be the final answer right there. So you're just taking out the greatest common term that they both have in common. So factoring a simple trinomial, let's not necessarily use this example. Let's use an example like x squared, let's say minus 7x plus 10. So this is a simple trinomial because there's nothing in front of the x here. So what you do is you get the factors of 10, right? 1 times 10, 2 times 5, and that's it. So what we're looking for, little tricks here, is we're looking for, we start at 10, you say factors of 10 that add, because that's a plus sign, that add to 7x. So which of these add? If this would have been a minus sign, we'd say subtract. Since it's a plus sign, which of these add to 7x? So 1 plus 10 equals 11. 2 plus 5 equals 7. So therefore, we're going to use 2 and 5. We have our parentheses. That's going to be x and x always if it's a simple. So we're going to say 2 and 5. Now the only thing left to do is to figure out the signs. What signs go here? Well, I'm going to teach you a little trick there. So if the second sign is a plus, so this is the first sign, second sign. If the second sign is a plus, whatever this first sign is, it's going to be both of these. So let's say the first one's a plus, and this one's a plus, therefore they're both a plus. Now, if the first one's a minus sign and the second one's a plus sign, they're both minus. So what if the second sign's a minus sign though? So say this is a plus sign, but this is a minus sign. So the bigger one is going to be a plus. So you would think of this one as a prize. So if it's a negative sign, think of the first sign as a prize, and the prize goes to the biggest number. In this case, so if the first one's a negative and the second one's a negative, we're talking about, again, these signs right here. If the first one was a negative and this one was also a negative, the bigger one is a minus sign. So therefore, how do we apply that to this problem? Well, minus plus, here it is in the graph, so they're both going to be negative. So there's the answer there. This is the answer. Now, how could we check that? Well, we can always FOIL it back out, right? So check, FOIL. So FOIL this back out, right? The first is going to be x squared minus 2x. It's the outside. The inside's negative 5x. The last is plus 10. Combine like terms, x squared minus 7x plus 10, which is our original problem. So check and check. So therefore, this is the answer. Okay, so it would help to memorize this. Now, again, this only applies to simple trinomials. Simple trinomials mean when it's just x squared, there's not a number there. So what happens when there's non-simple trinomials? Well, let's look at that. So this is an example of a non-simple trinomial because it has a 3 right there, right? So what you have to do there is, let's figure out the factors of negative 6. Okay, so 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So we want the sum of the factors to equal negative 1. So it would help to make a little chart there. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. That's where we get that. So the factors of negative 6. Negative 1 times 6. Negative 2 times 3. And then we can flip that, right? Just negative 6 times 1. Negative 3 times 2. So we would come up with a list of these, and we want to, the sum, so the addition of the factors is going to be, has to be negative 1 because of this. There's a negative 1 right there, right? We just don't write the 1. So negative 1 plus 6 is 5, so no. Negative 2 plus 3 is a positive 1, so no. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, so no. Negative 3 times, or negative 3 plus 2 is a yes. So, therefore, what does that mean? That means that these factors are going to be a negative 3. So then when we were finally to put this together, we'd say 3 and 1x, so 3x. Then we would say a negative 2 here, a positive 1 here. If we were to FOIL that back out, we would get the original problem. A lot of it you just have to play around with too. You can also use trial and error. That's not, we used grouping here, but you can use trial and error. And so in order to do that, you could say you just try out different numbers, the factors of 3, which are 1 and 3, and 2 is going to be 2 and 1. Okay, last example. First step is always to take out a greatest common term. So what do both these examples have in common? Well, you can't take anything, they just have 1. A 1's right here, right? So 1 and 16 can't take a common term out there. This one doesn't have an A. It does have a B though, so we could take a B out of both terms. So if we took, it's just going to say a to the 4th, but now that B is gone, and this B is going to be gone, so that's going to be minus 16. But we can continue to break it down, right? Because that's factorable, so that's going to be B. Whenever you have two perfect squares, such as a to the 4th, right, a squared times a squared is a to the 4th. Whenever you have a perfect square minus a perfect square, you just add and subtract the square roots. And so that's simply your answer. So if this is, for instance, x squared minus 25, that's just going to be x minus 5, x plus 5. Say it was x squared minus 36. It's going to be x plus 6, x minus 6. And say you had x squared minus 49. That's going to be x minus 7, x plus 7. One more, say you had x to the 4th minus 81, right? X to the 4th is a perfect square, then x squared times x squared equals x to the 4th. That's going to be minus 9 plus 9. So those are all little examples of this aspect of it. But remember, the first step in this is always take out a common term. One final one. We're going to go through one complex one together. Okay, like this one. This one seems very difficult, right? Like, where do we begin factoring this? The best way on the EOCT, a little cheat, quick method, is to just start foiling these out. So FOIL these. So this is going to be 15 x squared plus 10x. This is going to be minus 12x. I can stop right there because I know that if I add those, negative 2x would be my middle term, and I want it to equal 14x. So let's do another one. So 15x squared is my first terms. That's going to be minus 10x plus 12x. I can stop right there because I know that if I was to combine like terms, that's going to equal negative 8x. Positive 2x, sorry, and that's we want to equal plus 14, so it's not going to be that one. Let's try this one. That's going to be 15x squared plus 5x minus 24x. I can stop right there because I know 5x minus 24x is negative 19x, which isn't the answer. So let's try this final one. I mean, obviously this has to be the right answer, but let's try 15x squared plus 20x minus 6x. So 20x minus 6x is 14x. Finish it out, negative 2 times 4 is going to be minus 8. So if we clean that up, 15x squared plus 14x minus 8. That checks to this. Therefore, this has to be the right answer. So I would, on the EOCT, just FOIL these out. Factoring can be fairly trying at this stage if you don't know how to do it. With non-simple, this is non-simple because there's a 15 there. Okay, I think that should be it. Let's try some problems together.